Those are some hit beats. Welcome to Behind the Production. Good to be with you guys. Thanks for joining us. We've got people from all over the place hanging out with us this afternoon. I'm going to adjust my camera here so I don't look like such a fruitcake. We've got a very special guest and a dear friend of ours, Tony Fransen, on with us. And Tony is here making it happen. Sorry, we had a little technical glitch trying to get in, but we're here, we're live, and we're making it happen. Tony, good to see you, my dear friend.
Great to see you. How are you?
Dude, it's awesome. We are doing great. It's been warm here in Michigan, and but we're going to get some snow this afternoon, so they say.
Gosh, I love it up there. It's so good.
I think they're full of nonsense. I don't think we're going to get anything. And then I'll be out there at midnight with my snowblower. I said that now.
You know, I'm in Nashville right now, and they actually shut down some of the schools because of the rain. So that's a whole thing.
Because of the rain?
Yeah, no joke, man. I was like, wow, they're shutting down over the rain, huh? That's wild.
Y'all got to toughen up down there, man.
Yeah, I know.
Well, dude, thanks for hanging with us. I'm glad you're here. And like I said, we've got people all over hanging with us. So we're gonna jump into this thing, because when you and I were in prelim discussions about this, we had about 4 hours worth of content to talk about, and we really only
Yeah.
have like an hour and a half ish, whatever we're feeling. So anyway,
Yeah.
here we
Yeah.
go. Here we go.
Yeah.
So,
Well, lead
I
us in.
Yeah, I wanted to start off just. I think a ton of people have know of you, know your name. Lots have met you, but you're kind of a man of mystery in many regards. So I thought maybe it'd be cool just a little snapshot of your family and just a little nugget of some stuff you've done that you are doing, and just kind of bring everybody up to speed on Tony's life, so we can so we know you, but I want everybody to know you like we do a little bit.
It sounds weird. It sounds weird to say, but I've been doing live production, primarily lighting and video, for, I guess we're looking at about 23, 24 years now. That's a very weird thing to say because I'm 41, so I've been working basically in this industry since I was a late teenager. And I'm married to my wife, Marie. I live in Northwest Arkansas. I lived in Nashville for quite a long time. And a number of years ago, I decided to move to Northwest Arkansas to sort of just sort of regroup and sort of be somewhere that I could afford the real estate. and then raise a family. That was kind of my goal, is to be in a little bit smaller space so that I could raise my family. My wife and I met, I guess it's been 2017, maybe the tail end of 16. And we started dating, and then we got married, and then we had 2 twin boys that are now 3.5 years old. And we have a very full life. I'll just put it that way. and all through that, I kind of made my career on touring and being out on the road, and I sort of backed away from all the touring piece as much as possible from 2017 on, and so I don't really tour anymore. But I am involved in designing many live events still. I just don't do the touring piece as much. I do support tours occasionally. I did design One Republic last spring. Designed their live tour that went out worldwide for a full year, and so we were supporting that from home. And then I also work on a number of award shows throughout the year. That's sort of my regular rotation: the Dove Awards, the K-Love Fan Awards, the Stellar Awards, the Black Music Honors, and we've just added another one called the Black History Honors, which is an incredible look into Black history. And so I've kind of made a career now on just doing special events, which I just absolutely love, to be honest. It's the right pace, and it's a lot of fun. It allows me to be a dad and be home a little bit more, which is really cool. So, and that's the thing I'm, having 3.5-year-olds, that's the thing I'm primarily focused on. But I'm always, focused on growing in learning new technology. And so, I've been very, very fortunate to be able to get behind, MA3 and many different media servers. And so I have a large background of programming and all that. So that's sort of where I'm at this point in my life, I guess. I hope I nutshelled it good enough.
Yeah. We'd need a couple 2-3 dinners with this crowd so they could fully catch up on your sordid history. But that's a good snapshot of it. I love it.
Yeah. 20. It's been a long career, and it's something I love. I care deeply about the live production industry. I've worked with many of the major churches across the U.S. and I deeply care about worship music. And so it all sort of ties and trails together. No matter if I'm working on a mainstream project or working with churches, I care a lot about both. I care about the music industry, and I care about where the church is as a whole.
Yeah.
And how it looks, I guess, is the best way to say it.
Yeah, and that's a lot of what led us into this event. You were up here in Michigan at my home church, Northridge, and And
It's such a cool space.
yeah, absolutely. And we were just chatting and hanging out and into the wee hours of the morning and engaging some dialogue about what is going on, in the worship community. And you definitely have a passion. It was like, we need to engage this. So
Yeah,
yeah, I mean,
absolutely.
we've got some topics that we want to talk about, but we might free flow a little bit because that's just how it goes, and that's what's good. But I mean, yeah, you do have a passion for ministry. You work with us on several projects, and of course, a lot more coming down the line. And we've always appreciated and loved your vision and heart for what ministry can be and should be doing. And obviously, with your experience and knowledge base, it's worth listening to for sure. So this is a great platform for us to be able to do that. And who knows, we may have part 2 and part 3 of this discussion as we go along.
Hey, I'm always in, always. I like Josh said, I got to go up to Northridge at the end of last year, and Josh and I hadn't spent a ton of time around each other, but we immediately found a brotherhood there. And my time up there was really cool because we got to talk a lot about, where the church should be focused as far as their production arm goes. And it was interesting to hear somebody who was just as passionate about it as I am, talk about, where maybe the we've gone off track and how we can correct. And that was really fun for me to just spend, and again, be at your home and just listen to the conversations and talk. And we just had such a nice time. But
Yeah, it was great. No, I appreciate
yeah.
that. Yeah, and some of the things that we talked about, and I want to share with folks who are here with us is we talked a lot about kind of a broad spectrum, but we started just kind of digging into building blocks of systems, right? So I want to dive a little bit into that because that was something that I think both of us found a real common passion for what it should be, and maybe a common frustration for what it's not in certain regards, and how maybe certain systems that we're seeing or running across aren't quite fully engaging a cohesive and consistent approach. And I think we found kind of a common dialogue there. So I want to jump into that. I mean, how should people be approaching a system? And I'll say whether and again, we're kind of leaning lighting and visual, right? To the So let's talk live experience for a minute. But how should we be approaching a system? And again, that's whether we're maybe updating a system, or we've got an existing system, or we're looking to maybe put a new one in. But what are some of the things that we should be doing to make sure that that's intentional?
Oh man, I see a lot of, I spend a lot of time traveling. I'm not gone that much, but when I do, it's very intentional. I go spend time with very specific churches across the U.S. that need help often. It's like, okay, we need help. Can you come help us do whatever the thing is that we need to do? And sometimes that's training on lighting consoles, and sometimes that's helping to design a space, helping to lay it out. I think the approach right now has been, let's get. I'm gonna get in the weeds really fast here. So here we go. But the approach has been, let's get the equipment that we think we need, and let's get as much of it as we can. And I think the piece that has been missing is maybe not everyone is realizing how many people it takes to maintain the equipment, and how many and how much time it takes. And so that's been sort of an interesting thing as I've been traveling, hearing people's stories. I've had a number of friends that are facing this dilemma right now of, we need people, and what do we do? Because we, A, can afford a certain salary cap, or we can B, maybe B, we're in a rural area and we can't afford to bring somebody from another town in. We can't move them across the country. How do we get the people we need to support the equipment that we've invested in. And so I think that is a key thing when you're kind of coming up with what's next is, do you have the staff and do you have the infrastructure to support where you're headed as a ministry?
That's an important point. When you've got, I think a lot of folks maybe, and I think a lot of folks get in that corner, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was just talking to a guy today, and he said, I still have not been able to recover, even kind of post-COVID, my volunteer teams. I'm struggling with staff. I haven't been able to recover my volunteer teams. I'm on all the time,
Yeah.
We'll get into that a little bit, but he's struggling with maintaining the gear, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, you can't, and it's super important. And I think when you're looking at these systems, right, the long range management of that.
That's right. That's right.
I mean, how important is it to be making sure that that's part of the consideration? I mean, to you, let's just say from an installation standpoint, how much value should people be placing on maintenance, upkeep, operational care? Who's going to, when they're coming up with these plans, who's going to keep it going? Who's going to manage it? Like, what value would you place? I mean, I think a lot of people think, how much does it cost me and how much can I get and how soon can I get it?
That's right.
I don't hear a lot of maintenance talk out of people, but how does that play into it? I mean, at what level what's the value percentage wise that
you and I had a great conversation when I was up there in Michigan, and it was where is the rep plot these days? Where is okay, we're coming up with a plan for our visuals. Okay, let's call it the lighting and the video and all the elements. And and what happens when Christmas comes? And what happens when Easter shows up? What are we doing with all those elements? Are we going to completely build a new thing that for our audience or for our congregation? Or are we going to be sticking with the standard thing that we always do? And then how do we restore back to the standard thing that we typically do? And how smooth can that process be? And I think there's been over the last, the biggest thing I've seen over the last 10 years is we've seen a lot of lighting guys come up within the church because they understand how to operate the consoles. But we have seen this strange thing happen where the guys that design the systems or the guys that know how to maintain have been secondary. And I'm not sad about being a secondary person as a designer. That's not what I'm bringing this up for. What I'm bringing it up for is that the guys that help maintain the system or swap the lights to be the new plot or go in there and build these things out, they're just as important as the guy driving the desk, if not more important. And in my career as a designer, I try to tell people this all the time. I'm only as good as my team. I'm only as good as the people around me. And I can't, whenever I've had opportunities to design shows, I alone cannot make the vision come to life unless I have an incredible crew. And they are just as important as I am, and often paid just as well as I am, because they are the most valuable piece of it. They're the ones that are going to hang it, have the expertise to deploy it, and do it all safely. And then ultimately, if something goes wrong, they're the ones that are going to be able to get it back online and get it working correctly. Mm-hmm. Those are not always. That's not always my role. My role is to come up with a great look and to make sure that it looks great for the performance, but it isn't necessarily the background items of actually getting it hung and getting it put in place.
Sure.
And I think in church, the method has been, we want to do great production. The last 10 to 15 years, we've seen the church move so far towards production, video walls, lighting, moving lights, haze in church, color changing house lights. I mean, you go down the list, media servers and, graphics presentations and all the different things that we're doing now that are pretty much standard fare. But I hope we haven't forgotten some of the most important roles, which are the maintainers of the systems, the guys that understand how to take system A and turn it into system B, and to how to transition throughout the year and make those processes smooth. That to me is a very large missing piece in the production world right now in church. And I'm one of those guys that I don't believe that the message should be lessened because of production. I think if we're going to lead, from a spiritual standpoint, I think we should lead in all things we do, and excellence is one of those things. It doesn't have to be a lot to be excellent, but we need to be excellent at everything that we put out in front of the world. Ultimately,
Mm-hmm.
they're looking at us and going, "Hey, do I want to follow Jesus? And is everything that we're doing reflecting, the Lord?" And I think that's something that I always try to put forth whenever I'm like working in the worship environment is, okay, I want to do this unto the Lord. And I also want my art and my craft to reflect excellence, because I believe that that's what we're called to do. And I say all that to say, you may not have a massive system in your church, but you maybe are struggling with the excellence. And if you are, I think that there's a lot of resources to help you get better. And so I guess I'm just trying to talk to you about, how to move forward, in your day-to-day business and make things as good as they can be. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I think when you attend a church, it should be phenomenal. And so I think I'm not sure I'm not sure when churches invest in equipment, they realize all the background of how to keep that all running. They go to the theater and they see a great show. They go to a concert and they see a great show, but they don't realize, the 30 crew members that built that, what they just looked at, plus the local staff. We could call that volunteers in the church world. We
Mm-hmm.
often get volunteers to help us build things.
Yeah.
They don't see how important those, if not more important, those people are than the performance staff. So anyway, that's my soapbox for today, I guess.
No, that's right. I mean, the Formula One race isn't won by the driver alone.
That is right. That is, yeah, that's exactly right. So anyway,
in that
I'll mentioned throw that all out.
Well, you mentioned about a rep plot, and I want to touch on that because, or I want to go back to that actually, just kind of dive into that for just a second, because obviously we're talking to a broad scale of ministries. We all work with different size and scope, whether it's just small starting off, church plants, to some of the largest churches on the planet, right? Everybody's at a different level and different scale.
That's right.
I don't know that to me is irrelevant when it comes to how we approach a system, because I feel like, and again, dialogue that we've had, doesn't matter whether you've got 10 lights or 100 lights hanging in the rig.
That's right.
It really comes down to a mindset of making sure that clean, orderly, well-maintained is the name of the game, right? So
right.
whether it's 10, and if you don't do that with 10, who cares if you 100? You're going to, whether you got 10 lights that are all busted and don't work, or you got 100 lights that are all busted and don't work, you can't take care of 10, you can't do 100, right? So going to that piece that you talked about, having that baseline plot, right? Now, again, not everybody may be going into Vectorworks and creating a plot, but you could on the back of a napkin if you had to, right? Keeping something, hey, this is our baseline system. Whether we bring in something that we're renting, whether we're buying some new gear, we're going to add that in. How important is it to have that? This is our basic structure that serves all of our needs. And then how do we add things in? But then you said restore. How do we go back to making sure that it's still clean and still orderly, because I've seen it where it's stuff on top of stuff on top of stuff. And now the ceiling is the storage closet for a whole bunch of stuff that's not being, I've seen it, you've seen it.
Yeah.
Park on that for a second. I just want to unpack the importance of that a little bit. And again, doesn't matter size or scope, but let's talk on that for a hot second.
Well, I think I was having a conversation about this actually today with another colleague, and the word that came up was discipline. And they call doing lighting or video or audio, or scenic design, they call all those areas a discipline. And they call it that for a reason, because we have to exercise discipline in making sure that the equipment is doing what it's supposed to be doing. And so in whatever area you're in, your primary goal should be not only making it function, but creating whatever it is that you're meant to create with it. You can't create great art unless everything's functioning correctly. So I guess you got to walk back to, okay, if I want to build something really beautiful, I need to come up with a plan. And that is what a plot is. It's a plan. It's you see them in the home world. It's called a house plan. You're going to see all your rooms detailed on there, where the plugs are, where the plumbing is, where the counters are, all the way up through the walls and to the ceiling. It's the same thing with a lighting plot, and it can be as simple, like Josh said, it can be just like on a napkin, but it's going to detail out, hey, what are the addresses of my lights? Where do they hang? Where do they focus? What color do they need to be in? And it should be so easy to explain that you can show it to somebody maybe on your volunteer team, maybe on your staff, and they should be able to assist you in hanging it. And it should include things like dimensions. It should say, hey, this light needs to hang about 10 feet off center on this pipe, and it needs to focus at this location. And it should be that simple to be able to show that and go, hey, here's what these markings mean. And here, can you go hang this light with me? Yeah, sure, I can do that. No problem. At the end of the day, this stuff isn't that hard to do. But if we don't have a plan and we can't show it to somebody, then it's going to be all on you, the tech director or the house lighting guy. If you aren't able to show a plan, you aren't able to execute a plan. Does that make sense?
I think one of the things that's really important to pull out of that statement, if you will, or that concept, is that it's critical that processes be put in place for a ministry, whether it's a design process, a maintenance process, whatever, that is tailored to that ministry, is not dependent on a person, and can live on without us.
That's right.
Executive pastor always used to say, you need to design this system so that if you walk out in the street and get hit by a beer truck, it all still works.
That's right.
And to me, that was, you need to not design a system for you. You need to not create processes for you. You need to not lead for you. You need to create systems and processes and all of that for the ministry that function for us, that no matter, humans are plug and play. So we're not dependent on volunteers. We're not dependent on staff. But if you don't have that structure in place, you have nothing. If you lose 2 of your key volunteers, what happens?
That's
Life
right.
can't go on.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I worked on a venue a number of years ago, actually with you and with Evan, and and I won't mention, just for whatever reason, but the key to that venue was, it was a small venue, small space. We wanted to make it to where we could turn it on with a button press, which is actually not that, it's complex on the back end to program, but it's actually not that complex to deploy. Let's put it that way. Right. It's a couple wires go into a junction box, and you press the button and the thing turns on. So there's a little programming that happens in a box backstage and makes it all do that, but it's really not that complex. I mean, summing things down to where anyone can do it in the world of the church, especially in the smaller venues that, need to operate on a light staff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is one of the most powerful things that we can be thinking of these days, because it's doable and it's maintainable and it's easy for whoever is going to be operating that day to day. So
Yep.
sometimes it's not a professional that's going to be operating, the systems that are in a venue.
Yeah.
And so a little forethought into that can save you a lot of time and money and effort. See, Chris Pyron's on. He's asking us a question.
Yeah, and I think that's a good question, and I would like to drop that one in here because I think it's valuable. So Chris is asking, what are some good tools that you'd recommend for sharing those design ideas with the team on paper or on a screen?
Yeah, I'll take that. I draw a lot in Vectorworks, which you don't have to use to do what we're talking about. Vectorworks is a full-featured CAD program, 3D modeling, does all that type of stuff. We build these crazy models to where we can very accurately build systems. But you don't have to do that. To create a good plan, you could start with a program like OmniGraffle, or you could start with, you could probably even start with PowerPoint. And you could draw a plan in PowerPoint using circles and some text. And the next thing you know, you have something that you can repeat. It doesn't even have to be to scale, although that helps. But it can be a plan that is something that you can show your team and say, hey, here's how we hang the room. And it's made of dots that represent lighting fixtures and a line that represents a pipe. And it can be that simple. Now that can scale into all kinds of technology needs. So I can go on from there, but it could be as easy as that.
That's great. And I think that approach goes back to don't overcomplicate it and don't get beyond where you're at.
That's right. That's exactly right.
But start a process, right? Don't go, oh, I got to have Vectorworks. Well, you got 10 lights in a 50-seat room.
That's right.
Probably don't need to be going VW, right?
Yeah.
Don't overdo it. You're never going to get the couple grand from budget in that type of environment to buy the program, right?
Right.
Nor do you really need to go to that level. But that doesn't mean that the value of the process doesn't exist.
That's right. That is the key. That is the key right there.
I think, right?
Yeah.
In hearing you talk about it is we have to maintain the process and be able to work through it, regardless of size or scope. And I always tell people, and this is something that's embedded in my brain and our team, and you've heard me say it, you need to be thinking and behaving today like the organization that you want to be tomorrow.
Yeah, that's
right?
really good. Yeah, it's true. It's absolutely true.
You need to think and behave today like you've got 100 lights in the rig, even if you've only got 10. Because that part of it, right, doesn't matter. So I think it's really, really important that that point is considered. One thing on this that I just want to sort of weave in, sort of caveat with this, is a question that we talked fairly extensively about is how do we ensure that we're not throwing gear at problems? You mentioned gear earlier, and I wanted to kind of just sort of put a bow on this sort of segment of the discussion with this, because you mentioned people going out and just getting gear. How do we ensure that we're not doing that? And I think we've seen it, right? It's like, here's the latest and greatest, or somebody else has got it. Or how do we avoid those pitfalls and address issues not necessarily by gear? Is that loaded enough or unloaded enough?
Yeah, no, I like it. Yeah. How do we ensure we're not throwing gear at problems? I think again, it's going to come back to, it's always easy to sell a shiny object. And I think what happens is we begin to place our value in the shiny object and not in the amazing execution of using the shiny object. Am I saying that right, Josh? What do you think? Am I headed in the right direction here?
Yeah, I think so.
And I really think like we've spent a lot of time hyper focused on shiny objects and not hyper focused on the delivery that we're giving to our congregations and to our and ultimately to the people that need to be there, but the people who need to hear the message. And I just think that I don't know. I think that we need to be focused on how much we need, what the need actually is, and maybe not so much what the want is. I think there's a lot of needs in the world right now. If you click on Apple News or whatever news media you consume, there's a lot of stuff going on, and us owning more things is probably not necessarily the most important thing, unless that is absolutely apparent, absolutely necessary for your message delivery.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we need to be really hyper focused on, as ministry people that are working for ministries, we need to be hyper focused on what does our ministry need to convey the message.
Mm-hmm.
And how creative can we be with limited resources? How can we limit ourselves and use discipline to not just buy all the things that our peers might have, or what appears to be what they have. On Instagram, I see a lot of buddies checking out each other's services and shows, and it's like, none of that matters as long as you're doing your thing well. And whatever that thing is, and we're all in different positions, and we all have different issues, and some of it is staffing, some of it is just even being able to get the equipment we need, some of it is there's a million different layers to it, right? I don't want to waste your time with that. You guys all know what your problems are, but staying focused on the need, I think, is the most important thing. What do you think, Josh?
Well, I think part of that too goes back to being true to who the organization is, right? I think it's great to look at other ministries for inspiration, right? The people who scare us to death are the ones who say, we need to do it just like they did it.
That's right. Yep.
Those are the ones that terrify me, because they're a ministry's team that says that shows me one thing, that they're completely disconnected from the purpose. Because the purpose is not to be what someone else is. Every ministry has their own mission, vision, value, and purpose. And they all have that structured based on their own unique DNA.
Yeah.
If you try and do it like somebody else is doing it, you're ignoring the most important fact, which is who we are. We're all delivering the same message, but we're delivering it in a different and unique way that is based on who our ministry is called to be. There's 387,000 churches in North America alone. The reason for that is every one of them is saying something different in a different way to their region, their local community, right? I mean, even if you take a very, very structured religious entity like the Catholic Church, I can go to 15 different Catholic churches in a 30-mile radius, and they're all doing it different, even though one might have a band and a worship team, another one straight up organ, and that's it, right? So, and anything in between. So even in highly structured, now you start layering in different denominations, non-denominational, everybody's got something different, right? I mean, shoot, even Life Church, where Evan from our team and a couple of our team members came from, even in Life Church, one church, a gazillion locations, right? Even they have things that speak directly to the community that they are in. Events, programming, right? Styles, like right into the local community. So if you ignore that, or pretend it doesn't exist and try and do it just like somebody else, I think you're being totally untrue to who the church is. And gear follows that path, right?
That's right.
And I say all that to go back to that piece, which is the churches we walk into that have piles of equipment dead in the corner or alive in the corner is because typically because there was somebody who came in, volunteer or staff, who said, Pastor, we got to have this. It's going to do X, Y, and Z. And then they get it. And then it may or may not actually do what they wanted it to do. And then from there, it becomes obsolete after that person leaves.
That's right.
Right? You know, so when you start running down these paths of throwing gear at problems, like, oh, if we just had this piece of equipment, all our problems would be solved.
I think there should almost be a litmus test for a new purchase. And it's like, are we maintaining the equipment that we currently have? Is it all working? Are we overwhelmed and able to keep a decent schedule in the maintenance and the care of the equipment that we have?
Mm-hmm.
In other words, are we having 2 days off a week or a day off a week, whatever is acceptable in your community, and still able to do the things that we're needing to do? Or are we completely overwhelmed with what we already have and working around the clock 24 hours a day trying to maintain that equipment? If that's the case, you don't need more equipment. You don't need to be spending any money on anything new. What you need to be doing is figuring out processes and how to get all of what you have in order.
Mm-hmm.
Backing away from the overarching chaos, and hopefully recentering on what am I trying to get across with this equipment.
The tyranny of the urgent.
That's right. The tyranny of the urgent.
It is the tyranny of the urgent, and that seems to be the acceptable practice in ministry. And I don't understand it.
If we're gonna, you're gonna get me on a soapbox again. if we're as Christians gonna minister to the world around us, the community, the local community, our friends, our loved ones, our families, if we don't have any time to spend with them, that's a really big problem. You're not really doing any ministry. You know what I mean? You're bogged down in the weeds, man. Come on, let's get out of there.
Get out of it, right? Get out of it.
Yeah, come on, pull up. I used to love that. Pull up.
I always hear the automated thing that the pilots are doing when I'm getting on the plane. They push the little test button, pull up, like, you know.
That's exactly right.
Well, and then there's a ton of gear in the market. Tons. We go to every major trade show and event there is. NAB, LDI, Infocom. We're going to Pro Light and Sound in Germany. Blah, 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 right. Run the list. It's all, you got to have this. It's the latest and greatest. I mean, that's kind of the push, right? That's how they keep us.
Yeah.
That's the casino factor. That's how they keep us at the table. But I mean, we're even us as an organization are like, all right, we got to filter through this nonsense. What is most valuable? I mean, you go to NAB, that's every square inch of the Vegas Convention Center, right?
Yeah.
Of gear, video, broadcast gear. That's one segment, right? That's just mostly video. Not to mention audio and lighting and, all the visual scenic and all the other components that go into this. It can be overwhelming. And
that's right.
And easily get bogged down with how much there is and how do you process and how do you filter through that. One question that I had out of that, again, in our discussions, how important is it to understand what a piece of equipment is designed to do when you're making decisions? And an example of this I'll use is, I'm gonna use house lights. And I'm gonna use house lights because everybody, seems to want the color change. I want RGBW house lights, which is awesome. We're going to bring the look into the room. All right, it's great. Many will enter, many desire, few will enter, right? So there's a cost associated with that. And house lights, a decent sized room can have a lot of units. Some people try and go on the cheap. I'm going to take this fixture, right? That's not designed to be a house light. It's got fans and all this other stuff in it. And they make some interesting, decisions. But let's talk about understanding what it's designed for when we go into application, because it's really easy to try and cross-pollinate. It doesn't work.
Well, we used to have this issue in the concert industry whenever the Sharpie came out. I don't know if anybody remembers what a Sharpie is, but I'll just bring that up. So Sharpies are a very pinpointed beam light, okay?
Burned a couple carpets and some fabrics with those.
That's right. And you can burn through a drape with it, but it's a phenomenal look when you use it correctly, right? It's an absolutely great looking light. Used it for its purpose. Where we found is that festivals, because these were fairly affordable little lights, lighting companies began giving these lights out at a discount because they had them in their inventory for whatever reason. And they began providing Sharpies at low cost to these festivals, and they were replacing spot fixtures with them. So a typical spot fixture that could light a person or light a stage or a section of the stage, all of a sudden now we have a pinpointed beam. Well, that's not helping me accomplish my goal, which is to light my band. All that's doing is giving me a beam in the air that looks cool, but my band is now in the dark on stage. And so I guess if that can be the best analogy, we have to be using the equipment that's out there for the purpose that it's designed to be used for. A great example is using LED moving lights for house lights. I think it's a cool concept, and maybe it's a great special, but maybe we need to be looking at the amount of hours that these things are going to last. And I think that's a really, really important piece, because the house lights need to be turned on reliably every single time you press the button. And they need to never fail, because, that's how people see to get in and out of the chairs in your space. So that becomes a really, really important purchasing decision, I guess you could say. And I think that depending on where your ministry's at, you may be looking at that. You may be looking at it going, but I could just do the same with these LED moving lights. They're pretty affordable, and I can put them all over, and then I can have multiple different looks and all this thing. And that's really cool. But just make sure they're not going to be as robust long term as what a light that's designed to be a house light would be.
Well, they'll carry a maintenance schedule with it that's probably fairly obnoxious compared to something that's designed to do that job, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's been my experience that anything that moves typically has to be repaired,
Yeah.
So that is the thing.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, and
that's
I think it's really important in that decision making again, I think it goes back to looking at the fundamentals and considering the entire picture of, it might be shiny, it might be fun, but what does my ownership look like of this piece of equipment? And am I buying the right piece of gear for the right application? Right.
Yeah. And we see that same thing with video walls. I think there's a real movement going on right now in the larger whole of the church. Churches that can afford to do it, they're investing in LED walls heavily. And what I think a lot of folks aren't thinking about is what's going to go on those LED walls. They're thinking about, we need to have this LED wall so we can look like the cool church down the street, or I've got photos of Passion on my website, and it's like, so we can look like Passion, or we can look like whatever other church. And it's like, man, do you know how much time and effort goes into creating the content that goes on those screens? And do you have someone on your staff that's willing to devote their time to building that content? The guys that are doing it really well, these are not things that just come plopping out Sunday morning right before church starts. These are things that are worked on for weeks and months in advance to be presented one time or maybe two times of use, and then you're on to the next thing. There are generic content companies out there that you can use generic pieces to kind of create flowy backgrounds and things. But if you want to do it really well, and again, it goes back to your messaging. If you want to be sending out the best message possible, you're going to have to invest in content.
Mm-hmm.
That's just going to be a piece. But so often I'm seeing that, we should just buy an LED wall because that's the cool thing to do. It may be right for you, it may be right for your ministry, but it also may be the wrong move for your ministry. And you may be looking at the same thing over and over again for the next 5 to 10 years, depending on use. Or you could come up with some really beautiful scenic, and you could swap that out for a fraction of the cost.
Mm-hmm.
And you could be doing, something kind of fresh every 3 to 6 months. That's going to cost you way less money than the, $250,000, $300,000 investment it's going to be buying an LED wall, depending on the size. So
yeah, or
we
some
need to be thinking
combination
about
thereof,
that.
right? Something
That's
that
right.
something that gets interesting. I mean, one of the questions that we're regularly asking was how do you intend? Give me a price on a video wall. Cool. What do you want to do with it? Are you looking to build a big giant rectangle? Do you want something that stays there forever? Do you want something that's creative and interesting that you can break apart and manipulate the pieces and the components? I mean, we did a whole segment with Church of the Highlands. We've got 450 panels of video tiled on there with them that we did a couple years ago. And they're probably one of the most progressive ministries I've ever seen in actually using and leveraging a video panel system to its utmost potential in regularly reconfiguring and re-engineering and making it interesting, keeping it fresh. I mean, I've never seen the same design from them twice, right? I think, but that's their approach. That's their vision. So, you get into it and you go, well, if you're just going to put a rectangle on the wall and leave it there forever, is it right? Is projection right? Can you do some other things with some of that budget that you may desperately need to? Certainly have walked into plenty of places that have video walls and they're trying to do broadcast and they got trash for lighting. And I go, what on earth are you doing in here? You spent what on a video wall? Your pastor is blue for the broadcast on the weekend. Why? Who talked you into that? So the other one, back to your content piece, is cinema wide. I want that skinny, wide. Let's do a big video wall. It's killer. Looks great. Do you have any idea what it takes to make the content for that on a week-to-week basis?
That's right.
You're not just
do it the right quality.
You're not just plugging into Pro Presenter and sending that out there, and you got to get. It's work. It takes work. Don't want to overwhelm you, but it takes work. So, I mean, that's a really important.
And it gets even more fun when you start breaking up the tiles and creating, multiple surfaces and all these things. And it all can be done, and it all can be done well. But you have to ask the question: are we prepared to take that piece on? Is our ministry prepared? Do we have the people in place, or is this going to be a new hire? And that's where we really need to be looking at. Are we prepared for this move? Ultimately. So, I love getting to talk about this stuff. I think it's so fun.
Well, I'm picking up on a theme, which is we come up with a plan, and having the parts and pieces is a-okay. Love the parts and pieces. But let's make sure we're making the right decisions, and we keep going back to the plan and the foundational pieces of it. How do we effectively plan for the long range vision, even though we may not have all the budget on day one to do everything that we want to do? What does that look like to you when we're working with folks?
Yeah, that's a beautiful piece of a plan. When you start heading down a direction with a plan, you can begin to segment that plan into phases. And I've had to do this many times. I used to be the king of wanting it all right now when I was a young kid. I was working with my family's ministry when I was really young, and I never understood the value of the dollar, I guess. And I wanted to have everything right now. I was like, no, and this is not my vision unless we have it all. And I think that carried over a little into my career too, probably. I'm very, very particular about things. But that said, if you create a great plan, you can execute it in stages. Okay, first stage, before we invest in an LED wall, we need to rewind and talk about what lighting we're going to need for that. You just brought that up. So this is a great segue into this. Well, where do we need to start with our lighting? Well, we need to start with good key lighting first. We need to be able to light everybody's face. So that's going to be our first step. Step one, good key lighting. Step two, we need to get some backlight. Step three, how do we deploy that on a 70-foot wide stage? Okay, we're going to need a lot of backlight and a lot of key light. Is our pastor going to be moving all across that stage? Well, no, actually, he stays within the middle 10 feet. Okay, we don't need as much light now, you know? But the beautiful thing about creating a plan is that you can execute it in pieces and build into the ultimate goal of owning the piece that you need to have, having the vision come to life. The vision ultimately is to have a beautiful looking stage with an LED wall behind you and well-lit scene that can maybe change color and do all these things. Well, you can execute that piece by piece by piece. You know, also, you know, I might add that control isn't cheap once you get into all this stuff, and you may want to be thinking about what control you're starting with, you know. Anyway, I digress on all that, but a plan can be executed so easily over the course of a couple of years. And if you know, I've actually seen, I don't work for E2I, so I do work with them occasionally, but I've seen you guys help churches arrive on that decision very, very well, because you walk them through how to phase it out and still get the product that they need on day one, which is really cool. And then, hey, this is the product you'll end up with on day 630, you know, and that's really cool. And you work within their budgets and their scope. And I think that's a really, I'm not trying to pitch E2I to anybody, but what I am saying is working with an integrator that does a great job of walking you from A to B is such an important piece of all of that.
Well, and something that we regularly tell ministries, and that, you know, a lot of people timidly approach and they go, okay, so we're not a big church, we don't have huge budgets and all this stuff. And I always like to put them at ease immediately. So let me tell you something. I don't care what the size of the ministry is, who they are, what they do, big or small. No one has all the money to do everything they want in the moment that they want it.
That's
Nobody.
Right.
Everybody is working. Don't be fooled. Everyone is working within budget constraints. Scale may be different, but to one church, $1 million budget might be everything they ever see over 15 years to spend on gear. Another church, $1 million budget might be the one thing that we're upgrading right now. Yeah. But they probably want $1.5 million or $2 million, right? You like, it's all scale.
Isn't that just human nature right there?
It is. I mean, yeah. But the reality is nobody has all the money to do what they want when they want it. Everyone has to work within constraints. Everyone has to make compromises. That doesn't mean that you can't cast a long vision.
That's right.
And phase it out in a way that makes sense. And I think if you approach it in such a way that allows you to, you know, let's face it, leadership sees the tech team coming and they're like, oh, here they come again, asking for more money, just reaching into the cookie jar. Give us more, give us more. Our world is expensive. No question about it. Yeah. But if this is a value and it's important and required to deliver the message of the ministry, then it should be having a big seat at the table in terms of how much resources end up going into it. But all that to say, a well-laid plan makes us look really good as tech people in the eyes of leadership.
That's right.
Because when they see us coming, they know that we're well thought out, well planned, We've got budget targets in mind. We have a timeline in mind. And we've put some thought behind it. And we're not just trying to get the latest and great. I mean, the bean counters want to spend zero, and we evidently want to spend it all. So, which is not true, but that's how we get seen a lot of times. And frankly, a lot of bad history has caused that to happen, right? So a lot of times, you know, we may be fighting an uphill battle where maybe the person who was on staff before us didn't quite set us up for success, and we have to fight doubly hard to make things happen. But a well-laid plan is good and helps people see that we are thinking this through. And you can now go to them and say, I need to do everything. It's going to be 200 grand. I need 50 to get going. I'm going to need 75 to keep moving for phase 2. We're going to need 100, right? And you're going to start layering it like that in bite-sized chunks that they can, you know, deal with.
I want to say this too. We need to be, as ministries out in the world, we need to be thinking about progressively moving forward and not getting hung up. I'm trying to say this the best way. We need to be progressively thinking about moving forward and not getting hung up in the old ways. You know, there are so many ministries I've seen that are stuck. It's maybe because they, like what you mentioned, you know, maybe because they had a staff member that, you know, didn't perform the best or didn't do what he said he was going to do. She said he was going to do. And they are sort of stuck in a version of time, and they're needing to move forward. And I would say the plan will help you. If you're a tech person watching this right now, creating a great plan that shows them how, hey, moving your conventional lights to LED is going to save you money in the long term. Moving some of these old power hungry dimmers out and bringing in some low powered LED fixtures, how that's going to improve. But also, it's not just going to improve the power consumption, but it's going to improve the look on stage. And here's what we'll be able to do with it. Moving the greater church forward and keeping the vision alive, I think, is such a big deal. Making our spaces not only architecturally beautiful, but the execution of the technology really incredible, creates inspiration. And that inspiration is ultimately what is going to bring new people into our church. And give us an opportunity to minister to more people, I think. I don't know if it's that formulaic, but I know we play a part in that. I know we play a part in experience. I know we play a part in the overarching look and feel. And whether somebody notices that it sounds good or looks good when they attend a church, they know that it feels right. And I think that is such a big piece we need to be thinking about in our positions, is how do we make this feel right to people who, A, come here all the time, B, are coming for the first time, and C, the people who come occasionally on Christmas and Easter. How do we make this a consistent experience for the people around us and in our community, and stay relevant? And I think that's I think that's maybe the rub right now. Is there's a lot. I think there's a number of congregations that are struggling with, okay, how do we move forward? That guy really messed us up because he didn't do what he said he was going to do, and now we're stuck. So I don't know. I throw that out there. I don't know why I even brought that up, but I'm throwing that out there for everybody to hear, because I think we need to be thinking about, with our plan, how do we move that ball down the field, and how do we represent, you know, the body of Christ the best way that we can.
When you mentioned excellence earlier, right, and you also said, you know, people knowing how and when it is when it does feel right, I think it's even equally as important to know how to avoid when it doesn't feel right, and to recognize like, this isn't jiving. We gotta go a different direction with this thing, and to know that that's okay. I mean, even the best laid plans. Okay, not feeling it, and if you're not feeling it, chances are others won't either, right? Is that delivering the message in the way that you want? Is the content being delivered in the way that you want? Is the experience being created the way that you're expecting it to? I think a lot of ministries, we've said this before, obviously got thrust into some decisions and some positions with COVID that they weren't ready for, weren't ever planning to do. Broadcasting, streaming, having an online church experience, or any of those terms and phrases that you want to add to it. A lot of ministries weren't prepared for that. No knock. That's totally okay. If that's not a direction that the church is going or was going or needs to be going, that's totally fine. I think they all went, we, as a matter of survival, have to do this. We have to do it differently. I mean, even some of the largest ministries we're partners with that were doing it had to totally do it differently, right? Everybody had to make different decisions. I think that now we're in a position where I'll call it the grace of quality, if I can say that, the grace of quality from the congregation is wearing off, and their expectations for a quality experience are rising again, and they want to have a great experience, whether that's live or in an online experience. And we have to be working hard to get back to re-engaging those experiences, because folks are like, everybody got it for a period of time. We'll accept it. We'll accept grainy video, bad lighting, terrible camera shots, audio is hard to hear. We get it. We're just happy to be having church. Everybody's over that. Now they're like, yeah, but I want it to be good. I don't want it. That's distracting. You know what I'm saying? Like, now it's distracting, and they're going, I can't stand this anymore. So I think that's really important in the planning phase of that, in getting out of some of that, is making sure that we're keeping excellence at the forefront.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, a lot of teams are pulled in too many different directions. Going back to what we were talking about before, is we need to get focused again, right? And not be pulled. If we find ourselves being pulled in every 30 different directions, we need to slam on the handbrake and go, okay, how do I prioritize? We need to focus. We need to prioritize where we're going to put our time and where we're going to place our energy. And how is it that we execute with excellence in those areas of priority, and just let the rest of it die? Because chaos in every direction does no one any good. Doesn't do the staff, doesn't do the volunteers any good, and it sure on earth doesn't do the congregation any good. Because they're getting, at that point, they're getting a bad experience everywhere. They're not getting the best of us in the online. They're not getting the best of us in the live. They're not getting the best of us anywhere, because we're so thin. Sorry, I got on a soapbox really fast.
No, it's good. It's good. I love it. No, it's like, hey,
up.
stabilize where you're at. If you're going through a time of chaos, right now, and that's where your production department is, or maybe you are the production department and you feel like you're in a little bit of chaos, stabilize. Stop trying to do too much. Explain to your bosses what you're capable of at a healthy speed. Stabilize, and then hone in your systems to where you can walk in and press a button and they boot, and they're going to perform. We kind of joke around about this on the Grand MA series of consoles. It's like, can we walk in and can we boot up our system by pressing one button? We can fully automate everything on a Grand MA. So can we parse it back to where a volunteer on a Sunday morning can walk in and press one button and be ready to start the service? And I think the answer to that and where we are in technology right now is yes, you can do that. And oftentimes it doesn't come at this tremendous cost to be able to automate your processes. And you can be prepared to do incredible things, but you have to parse it back to begin. You have to stop, you have to stabilize, and then you have to start looking at how can I automate my processes? How can I do the best with the equipment that I have, with just me or just me and my small team, or maybe me and my large team? How do we elevate even higher than we already are? And that's to stop, stabilize, and then start looking forward to the future of how we can do this better. And I think your pastors, your leadership in your churches are going to really appreciate that you are going to be taking a methodical approach to being excellent. I think it'll be a game changer.
Yeah, that's a solid point. No, it really is, and I appreciate you sharing that, because it's important for everybody to hear and engage on that long range. I want to shift a little bit. I want to dig into Tony's brain for a second. I want the people to hear.
Uh-oh.
No, I want to just
see the hair that grows out of this brain. It's a little wild, man. I'm just saying.
This is really gray now. This is my church work here. This is my married and home life. Here's my kids on this side. Here's running an organization. Okay. Yeah. People can tell the phase of my life by photos and how steep and deep the gray goes. So.
I got this patch right here from that first tour I did.
Yeah.
And then
this This is my neighbor.
I won't get into where they all came from. Don't worry.
Yeah, no, it's good. I wanna hit on two things as it relates to design and programming, because you're an incredible, phenomenal designer, in my opinion.
That's really
and cool. I think your approach is really great. Share with us a little bit. I want to hit a couple points on this, and then I want to talk, and then I want to wrap up with next generation stuff, and then we'll kind of leave the people wanting more, and then we can come back and do this again. But how do you approach a design and programming? How do you get into that? Because I'm fascinated by it, and I think everyone needs to kind of hear from you.
So, backing away from just like, kind of the topics we've been talking about, if I'm just going into a fresh design, clean, and we've discussed the budget and all the different things that are involved in that, and we're beginning to move forward, my first approach is always to come up with something that's sort of architectural. I like things that have a shape and a flow to them, and I've tried to do that over the years. One of the things that has assisted me in that is being able to draw. It's been an assistant, and it's also been a hindrance, and I'll explain that in a minute. But it's being able to sit down at a computer, at a drafting station, and begin to kind of concept what I want a shape to look like. And so I think that's my initial approach, is to kind of create something that's cohesive. So whether it's incorporating a set or whether it's incorporating video, lighting for me has never been just about lighting. It's also been about, okay, what are we actually looking at during this event or this thing that we're producing? And so that's sort of my approach, is to create something architectural. You can get it in some of the when I used to do more in the music world, like for Sarah Bareilles, I created this crazy archway that we did, projection on, had a circle in the middle of it. And when we skinned it all with this chaos fabric, and that's the type of stuff I love doing, is kind of coming up with textures and surfaces and things to be able to either project light, project video, show video, and then ultimately we want to be thinking about lighting the people that are on the stage. Ultimately, it's about supporting. So take my needs as a designer away from it. We need to be thinking about how we are supporting our person. Either it's our it's our team of worship leaders, our pastor, our artist, our speaker, um, our comedian. I mean, whoever that thing is, whatever the thing is that you're lighting, our drama, maybe our play. You need to be thinking about how to support that message. And you never want to put yourself in the position that you're taking away from the message. So whatever that message might be, maybe it's the message of love and you're supporting an artist that writes love songs or songs about hurt, or maybe you're supporting, a worship team that's bringing people hope. Whatever that thing is, you want to be setting yourself in a position to support what they're trying to communicate. And so that's typically the goal and the thing that I'm trying to kind of accomplish whenever I begin designing something is how do I bring a level of art and architecture, and then B, how do I bring a level of support to bring the message across the best that it can be brought.
Sure.
And to create visual interest, obviously too. I like I like things that look cool.
Yeah. Well, that's part of the engagement, right? Overall, it gets the excitement of the space.
So I guess that's my approach.
I've seen you do some incredible stuff with that.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that all, and the other piece of it is that it all plays into what type of budget you're working with, and you never want to. I've been caught a couple of times, and not much lately, thank God. But I've been caught a couple of times just over designing something, and creating more than what was needed for the application. And I think that's why that's why I've been on such a soapbox about that today. I think it's just because, that's something we all can be caught up in is producing something that's not necessary for the message we're trying to convey,
Right. So understanding the story being told and using that in the approach to the design. I think lighting, I'm just because that's my world too. I think lighting is one of the greatest tools that we've got to tell a story and to take people on a journey without telling them exactly how to feel, right? I mean, we set the context, color, texture, intensity, all those different things play into where we're guiding them, but they're kind of left from a congregational or an audience member, they're kind of left to their own devices to understand what the emotion is. Video is very straight there, right? I mean, the shots that are used, the words that are spoken, the style of music, all those things tell you pretty much exactly how we want you to think, feel, respond, right? But lighting's got this great sort of just subjective piece to it. And if we use it right, we can take people on a journey and an experience. And I like to tell ministries, that if we approach it with an intentional mindset, we can really create an unbelievable experience for people and focus them. We have the power through the desk to tell people exactly where to look and where not to look, and exactly what you want them to see and what you don't want them to see. And we have that ability with this tool, and we need to leverage it more, but we have to be well thought out,
That's right.
I've seen, when I look at programmers, I see some programmers that get it. I definitely see it in Broadway style settings. That is a show that probably one of the best uses of light to tell the story I've ever seen.
No, phenomenal. Absolutely beautiful.
You can't go through it without it. I mean, if you took the lights away, the show wouldn't be what it is, right? But in ministry, I think we have the same ability to do that. And this intentional approach, I see a lot of effects engine programming, one after the other, after the other. It's like, gotta get out of that. I mean, it has a place, but not every cue. Like we gotta take people somewhere, right? So I think kind of going back to your intentional approach topic, right? Of coming up with a well laid out plan and my approach to that individual experience. When you look at this sermon series, when you look at this individual, just this talk for this particular weekend, right? How am I supporting that through my side of the craft, on the visual arts side? And how am I setting people up to have this experience? Most importantly, how am I setting my pastor up to walk into the ability to convey the message by setting the tone and creating an experience? And it requires, I think, that very focused and very attentional approach week after week after week.
Well, I want to add one piece to that. It also requires trust. You cannot deliver something that is artistically focused from a technical standpoint unless you have the complete trust of the person that you're working with on stage. Typically, an artist wants to be portrayed a certain way. They want to look a certain way. They want to feel. They want their music to feel a certain way. It's the same with a pastor. He wants his message to come across a certain way. And without intimate conversations about what your person wants to be, what they want to look like, how they want to feel, you may be taking stabs in the dark. And so you have to establish a line of communication as a lighting designer, technician. You have to establish a line of communication with the people that you're working with.
Sure.
And I would encourage all of my friends, the technical roles, we often become pinned behind our stations, and we can get a little introverted when we get into those positions, because we're working with technology and we're trying to create with technology and we're trying to do things with tech. And we become this island sometimes. And I would encourage you, if you're feeling like you're in that position, there's no open lines of communication between you and the people you're working with, I would encourage you to step out from behind it all for a little while and normalize, and spend some time getting to know the people that you're working with on the other end of the stage. Or on the other end of the snake, as we say it in the production world. It's like, okay, so I'm on this end of the snake and you're on that end of the snake, and do we have any kind of actual relationship? And are we on the same page about what we're trying to create? And do we have trust in each other that I'm going to create what you're after, and that you're going to trust me whenever I try to take some chances on what things can be or could be? You can put yourself in a position where you want to go a little further than what everyone's used to. And there has to be a great deal of trust and handholding and guidance through that process. So, trust is a huge one for me. I don't know. It's sort of an interesting thing.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we're almost at time.
Cool.
Surprise. I knew that we'd have days worth of discussion, but so I want to be respectful of the hour and a half time that we slotted for everybody, so that folks don't miss anything. But I think we've set ourselves up to engage some future conversation. And
this was so fun.
To you for taking some time out of your crazy schedule and hanging with us and just sharing with the community. It's really important that we hear from a variety of different people who are in different parts and aspects of the industry that we're working in, and just thanks for your investment in the ministry community and sharing your knowledge, and most importantly your heart and passion with everybody. So special thanks to you for being here. So awesome.
Thank you so much for having me, Josh, and I can't speak more highly of any person I work with than you and Evan and your team, and I'm just so impressed with everything you guys do. So thanks for including me today. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And thanks everybody for joining us. This will be available online on our YouTube channel if you want to share it with somebody who couldn't be here, and get them engaged. If you have any other questions, hit us up. Let us know. We'll talk to you guys soon.